Ulholiwai, Tutula, Ulholiwai, Tutula, Ulholiwai, Tutula, Namwasiza. Ulholiwai, Tutula, Ulholiwai, Tutula, Ulholiwai, Tutula, Namwasiza.
And thank you for joining us for yet another empowering and powerful, also inspirational story. And today we are joined by the Executive Director, Resource-Oriented Development Initiatives. Simply you can call it RODI Kenya. He is Mr. Eliud Kihoro Ngunjiri. So Mr. Eliud, can you briefly tell us, because we'll also get back to that, what does, in a nutshell, what does RODI Kenya deal with?
RODI is an NGO. It's registered with the Kenya NGO Coordination Bureau. In full, it stands for Resources Oriented Development Initiatives, and we have a mission of breaking the cycle of poverty, crime, and reoffending. And to pursue this mission, we work with inmates or prisoners, ex-prisoners, and their home communities. We also work with schools and general communities like farmers.
So how has been your journey from to the Executive Director been? From when did this calling, I call it a calling, start this NGO?
My journey in development started a number of years ago. I used to work for the government. I worked for the government of Kenya in the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development back in West Pokot, and thereafter, after 6 years, I resigned and joined Oxfam GB, or Great Britain, where I was as a program officer for 14 years. While in Oxfam, I happened to visit a prison in Kisumu, the famous Kodiela prison. And while there, I noted that they had a lot of water, a lot of land, and a lot of human labor, only to be told that they're not self-sufficient in food because they don't have inputs for producing food. And I told them, why can't I show you a method that does not require external inputs to grow food? And that's how our journey with prisoners started.
The journey of RODI Kenya. So how has been your journey? Let me take you back to your roots. Who is Mr. Ngunjiri? Where did you come from?
When I was born, I was given the name Kihoro by my mother, and thereafter I got baptized and became Eliud. And of course my father's name is Ngunjiri. I was born back in 1952 in a white man's farm in Laikipia, where I grew up. Thereafter we were transferred to our roots, that's in central Kenya, during the emergencies, and we were kind of imprisoned in those notorious villages during the colonial days. And that's where I studied a little bit, and then we moved back again to Rift Valley and continued with my education. After school, primary school, I joined Kihoro High School. I had a first division, but unfortunately I couldn't proceed to Form 5 and 6 because I had just that time lost a father. I decided to become a teacher, and I taught for 1 year as an untrained teacher, and thereafter I went to Haiti to study range management. Range management sounded exciting because it deals with 3/4 of Kenya, which is arid and semi-arid. After my graduation, I was posted to West Pokot, where I stayed.
So you stayed for 6 years?
Yeah. Stayed for 6 years with the government, but I didn't move out. I bought land and I built a house there. I got married there in West Pokot, and I still retained the land. But luckily, that's when I got a better job with Oxfam and moved out. Before I moved out, I got married. I am a father of one wife and 3 sons who are mature boys who have all gone through university. And after 14 years with Oxfam, I decided it's high time I decided to do something that I would direct myself. But before leaving Oxfam, I was lucky to study in Europe. I went to Britain for a course in Oxford, and then thereafter in 1991 again, I went to Reading University to study rural social development, which in actual fact has made me get closer to with my people, and that's why I like doing community development, which I do now. The biggest challenge while working with Oxfam was to find out why poverty continues to increase unabated in spite of being fought by the government, being fought by NGOs. Everybody is fighting poverty. Believe you me, instead of going down, it continues going up. I started interrogating, why is this the case? Only to realize that the tools that we use to fight poverty are the ones that we use wrongly. More often than not, people go to a community to find out what their problems are, and very rarely do they find out what resources they have. So we always we make ourselves busy trying to help people find out what problems they are and not what resources they are. And believe you me, if you for a moment focused on people's resources, you would be on the right track, unlike when you just focus on people's inability, people's emptiness, people's problems.
Before starting Rodi Kenya in 1989, that is when it started, why did you choose to work with prisoners? Because you would have started any other NGO. If it was an NGO really you wanted to start, you would have started maybe children empowerment. But why did you exactly choose to stick to help prisoners?
It's a little bit, if you want to take you a little bit back. In 1989, we started working with farmers, trying to show them how to produce food using alternative methods of agriculture, which in short is known as organic agriculture or sustainable agriculture. While working with them, with the small-scale farmers, that's when Makila was still in Oxfam. That's when I started the organization when I was still in Oxfam. That's when I realized that farmers go hungry, yet they have a lot of resources that they can mobilize to make a difference in their lives in terms of food, in terms of cash. While working for Oxfam, I organized a workshop, a water workshop, and it required that we visit one of the prisons in Kisumu, Kodiaga prison, or better known as Kisumu GK prison. While there, we had gone to see a gravity water intake, nothing to do with the prisoners. But I was surprised to see that in spite of them having a lot of land, a lot of water, a river going through the prison, and a lot of human labor, they could not produce enough food for themselves and even for sale. And when I told the officer that I was surprised that they didn't have to, they could not grow enough, they told me that it's because the government doesn't give them adequate allocation. And I told them I was ready and willing to show them an alternative way of doing it. No sooner did we start working with prisoners in order to increase food production and increase government revenue, then I realized there is a bigger problem in the prison. When interacting with prisoners, I learned that many have been there the second time, third time, fourth time, and I asked, why do you keep coming back? And then they told me the story about poverty pushing people into crime, and especially in the country where survival and coping mechanisms for poor people are criminalized. Poverty pushes people into crime, and crime pushes you into prison. And when you go into prison, you interact with worse criminals, and when you leave prison, you go back home, you get rejected, and you go back into, and you get trapped in the cycle of recidivism.
Okay. Mr. Ngunjiri, you seem to have a fascination with, I'd say, farming. Fast farming. You have an interest. So where did this interest really come from, or did you have, because from your education background, you have not done a lot of farming, I'd say. You have not really done a course on farming. So when did you really start to have this? People can actually produce their own food. I like farming. Farming is something tangible, yeah.
Okay, agriculture. Range management is a course that focuses on people in pastoral areas or arid and semi-arid areas. It's about livestock, it's about whatever they can grow, even in semi-arid areas. So the course had animal production, animal husbandry, a lot of pastoral, rangeland, vegetation, and agriculture is in me because we were brought up in a rural setup where agriculture was always a preoccupation. Every time we closed to school, we would go to the shamba Not that we liked it, but in actual fact, I think it stuck. And my interest in agriculture is because agriculture is a livelihood for most Kenyans. It's the backbone of household economy. Agriculture is the backbone of national economy, and it's the biggest employer. It's the one that feeds our industries. So agriculture is very, very important, but we are at a loss because agriculture is not given the attention it deserves in spite of being that important. For example, agriculture is not taught in primary schools. And that's a long story. That's where we go wrong as a country. We shoot ourselves in the foot. Because if agriculture is as important as it is, it should be in the curriculum. It's not there. Just like many other practical subjects are not there. Yes.
So you started the NGO. How was it starting? Before you could, okay, you went to Kodiega prison, that is in Kisumu.
Yes.
You did that project. You told the administration there that you would help them. So how was it started?
It was not. In those days, prisons were a no-go zone. But because I was going to show them the miracle or the magic of producing food without fertilizer, the doors were open for us. At Makiu, I was doing Oxfam. So I had looked for an organization which was going to do that, because at Oxfam I was a donor, so to speak. So I chose this organization that I had started, which used to be known as Organic Farming Outreach Program. And I told them, please carry on and help the prisoners and the prisoners to produce food, with the idea or with the aim of giving them skills so that they do not come back into crime again. Our work started by, you give them skills, you tell them and give them certificates saying that so and so has acquired this certificate while in Kodiaga. They didn't like it because it reminds them, and it reminds whoever it is that who will see the certificate that they were in prison. So we decided that ours was to give them certificate of participation to show that they have acquired skills, where they got them notwithstanding. And the skills we give these guys are aimed at doing 5 things. Prison is not a holiday camp. Prison is a prison, and you wouldn't like to be there. But so while in prison, people lose a very valuable thing, which is self-esteem. Prisoners lose self-esteem, they lose hope in life, they lose need for self-support, and they become stigmatized and rejectable material by the community. So our package for rehabilitation is to give these guys skills, unique skills for that matter, skills that will make them see themselves as special people. For example, when you show them how to make yogurt, when you show them how to make powder soap, when you show them how to make shampoo or bleach, known as chick shampoo, so they feel that they are better than they thought. They feel they are better than anybody in the village, and that helps them regain self-worth. And when we tell them that from milk they can produce 7 products like butter, yogurt, ghee, cheese, name them, and from tomatoes you can make tomato sauce, tomato jam, tomato juice, tomato pickles, tomato chutney. When they start asking, when will I leave this place to go and do that back home? And that, in actual fact, makes them have hope in Maisha, have hope in life. And of course, when you give them skills, and you give them skills which get into their heads, you give them notes and all these other things, they have skills for self-support upon leaving prison. And we tell them, when you go back to prison, one other thing, over and above using the skills for your own use, you have to pass them on. Usambaza, you have to pass them on to the wider community in order to pay back for the offense you committed, in order for them to, instead of rejecting you, so that they can embrace you, to accept you back. So we tell them these skills are of so many uses, and one of the uses is to enable these guys to feel that you are back, and now you are not a jailbird, you are a resource who can train them in doing all these things.
I believe it was not an easy journey starting, and also it was quite hard trying to get the resources, getting donor funds maybe, because that I believe those projects required money at that time, and it was not easy to start convincing donors that, you know, I want to work with prisoners, because I believe in 1999 people maybe had this, would call it stereotypes, or even now people still have stereotypes that when you go to prison you are forgotten, you can't be rehabilitated.
You're very, very, very right.
Yeah. So
our journey and our struggle that time and even now, it's never been easy. When you tell people you want to rehabilitate prisoners, first and foremost the community, they say you're siding with a criminal, and that basically you go to a donor. Donors are also organizations that give out money, are also made up of people, and if they have a stereotype, or if they have interacted with a prisoner for one reason or the other, they tell you, please, we do not fund such projects. It has been very, very difficult, and the government doesn't give us money. But all said and done, we've been struggling. In actual fact, when you tell these guys about human rights, all these guys who are in prison are relatives, they are our sons and all that, they tell, spare me, please, tell me something else. So we've learned to, in actual fact, tell people that prisoners are a burden by virtue of the offenses they committed, by virtue of being catered for at the taxpayer's expense, by virtue of being interacting with criminals and the likelihood of them leaving prison hardened and committing another crime. We tell them prisoners are a burden because all their responsibilities are shouldered on the relatives and the community. So if you have that many burdens on your shoulders, do you want to continue keeping the burdens on your shoulder, or do you want them down? You offload. We are helping you to offload the burden, because the more you keep prisoners inside prison, you are at a loss, because you continue feeding them and they come out hardened, you reject them, they eat you once again. So we have no choice other than to, in actual fact, try to rehabilitate the prisoners.
Okay, before we go for a break, I'd like you to mention maybe the people or organizations that have really helped you through the way, and maybe the people who have given you that push, because I believe in everything that you start, there's that one time when you want to stop it, because it becomes hard. Sometimes you feel that you have hit a brick wall, nothing is happening, your projects are not making any difference.
Right.
So who has really helped you?
The people who have helped us, first and foremost, and in no order of priority, the prisons department. With the onset, even before the onset of the open door policy, the prisons department opened doors for us to go in and interact with prisoners. That's not a mean achievement, especially when prisons were a no-go zone up to year 2000. That's when they opened the doors for people who would like to help get in. The other form of support or supporters or partners, my former employer Oxfam was the first organization to give us money. That was back in 1994 when I was still working with Oxfam. 1994 all the way up to 2001. And then Oxfam is an international organization, as you know. It's the biggest charity in the UK, and now it's gone international. The second partner or development partner is the Tudor Trust, also based in the UK. They started funding us since 1999 to date. And we also have GLS, trusteeship, it's based in Germany. Those ones have funded us since 2001, and they still continue. So we have people who are sympathetic to our cause. We have had money from the DFID, Department for International Development, that's DFID. We've had money from, we continue having money from Open Society from America, and we also have money from a German-based organization known as Bread for the World. We are very, very sympathetic, very, very, very happy or thankful to them for enabling us to come this far and for not showing any sign of giving up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That is an amazing, it's amazing work that you're doing. And when we get back, we'll get to know the vision and also get to know the new projects that the Rodi Kenya is undertaking today and maybe in the future to help us rehabilitate our prisons, and also deal with our resources, equitable distribution of our resources. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back.
Day of the month.
Welcome back. You're still with Deliverance TV, and this is my story. And we are with the Executive Director, Rodi Kenya, who has dedicated his life to rehabilitate ex-prisoners and prisoners in general. So people would like maybe to know, have you ever been to a prison? have you ever been an inmate?
I've never been an inmate, but I always tell people not yet, because prisons are made for people. You can never say you never get to go into prison. So I simply say I've never been a prisoner, but you never know. You can't rule out.
Would you maybe give the viewer, because I believe you have been there, you have worked one-on-one, talked to prisoners who maybe are in there for life, 10 years, they have lost all hope. How is it when maybe somebody gets into prison? How is it? How do you find, how do you relate? How do they tell you they related with prison when they got in there?
First instance, when people get into prison, it's like a shock of their lives. When you're told that you're going to be here for 10 years or 5 years or all your life, you kind of feel like that this is the end of the world. You become irritable, you start not believing yourself. The whole process of not accepting the reality, but with time. But the worst problem is when you start thinking in terms of your family, your children, your wife, your mother, your job, your business. When you think of the fact that you won't see them anymore, that mental torture, mental anguish is the one that hits these people in a big way. And that people tend to think that what is bad in prison is, okay, lack of freedom, yes, true. They think that food is the problem of sleeping. No. It's mental torture that's the biggest problem, because that torture comes unrelented. It doesn't leave you, and that makes you lose self-esteem and hope.
Would you partly blame the stereotypes that we have of prison? Because a person who has never been in prison or related with a prisoner thinks that we tend to condemn them. So would you blame that on maybe our our society, or how we socially relate, or maybe to our administration? What would you blame that to?
There's fear in interacting with prisoners. First and foremost, they've offended. They committed a crime. Okay, there are those who are not, who went there not because of their own making. Some may go into prison because of trumped up charges. They didn't commit an offense. Others, majority committed offenses. And instead of, in actual fact, getting corrected, they lean towards hardening by interacting with what prisoners or criminals. Prison is like a college where if you're not careful, you be trained to become a hardcore. And people have no reason. I wouldn't blame people for fearing prisoners. But once that's acceptable, you fear prison. But the other thing is that the best thing is to actually fear them, but also give them a chance. Because if they don't reform, then you are in danger, because they will leave prison, come and hit you, go back again. So we have no choice but to, in actual fact, accept the fact that much as they've offended, the worst thing is to repeat. And I tell them, guys, all is not lost. The worst thing is not to commit a crime. The worst thing is to repeat the same crime. I'm here to give you a second chance, and please accept it.
So, because you have interacted with prisoners and also you have done, Rodi Kenya has been in existence for how many years? Please remind me.
We started in 1989 as a CBO, known as Organic Farming Outreach Program, and then in 1999 we changed the name to Resources Oriented Development Initiatives, which has a philosophy behind it. The name has some philosophy. We, in actual fact, focus on people's resources and not people's problems.
I would like to ask from there, for I have not really done the math to how long you have been in existence, but which is that one success story, you being the executive director, which is that one success story that really, or how many success stories do you have as an NGO?
We have many success stories. One is the fact that our rehabilitation approach is not just rehabilitation as you may want to think of it. We use a restorative prisoner rehabilitation approach, which means our rehabilitation is based on restorative justice, whereby we target the offender for restoration, we target the victim, the community for restoration, and as much as possible the victim. So we target those three people because each one of those three needs to be restored. The offender fell into crime, they need to be corrected, punished and corrected, and the community is offended because you committed a crime, and they are annoyed. They need to be restored and be reassured that you will be of no harm when you come back. And the victim, we assume that within that community, the victim is there. So when we target the community, we say that we are actually targeting the community and the victim. So that is a successful thing because it is the opposite of, it's different from the criminal justice system whereby you commit a crime, you get jailed, commit a crime for stealing my livestock, rendering me poor, and you go in for 7 years, I will not get my livestock, so I'll be waiting for you to come out so that I can revenge. And you yourself, you know that I'll hit you, I'll revenge. So you also sharpen your arsenal to come and make sure that Ngunjiri doesn't put me down. So the criminal justice system does not build peace. If anything, it builds vagabonds. That person leaves prison and doesn't want to go to their home, they want to go to another place, and by so doing they become vagabonds.
Do you think that the government is doing enough in terms of rehabilitation? Because day in, day out, we get stories that prison is the worst place to ever be in, especially a Kenyan prison. There's no space, human rights are neglected. So is the government really doing enough?
I think the government is overwhelmed. I think the government doesn't even know how to crack the problem. And this becomes my second story. I have found out that because every time we ask ourselves why crime continues to increase, why crime, why crime? And we've seen that our education system is on the spot. First and foremost, we argue that when we ask prisoners why do you enjoy getting into crime, they tell you no, it's because of unemployment. Unemployment leads to idleness can lead to drug and substance abuse and a crime. That's unemployment. Then we ask ourselves, why is unemployment so rife? Why? And when we go backwards, we find that it's our education system that is wanting. Our education system has a very, very serious academic bias and little or no practicals at all. And that's where the rain started hitting us as a country, because with practicals, when an education system is full of practicals, when an education system has practicals, with practicals the learner gets engaged totally. Practicals engage all the faculties of a learner, all the senses of a learner. So with the practicals, that's the best way of learning, and I'll tell you why. We are told that we retain 10% of what we read. So if an education system is heavily reading kind of education, reading, you only retain 10%. We told that we retain 20% of what we hear and 30% of what we see and 50% of what we see and hear. And surprisingly, 90% of what we do. So our education system should have a balance of academic practicals. And even if it leans towards practicals, the better it should be. This education system of ours is on the spot, it's the cause of our problems, and we don't seem to have a way of an answer to it. But I would suggest that we correct our education system. And that's why Rodi Kenya has an education system, project, which we call school-based crime prevention and life skills. We came up with school-based crime prevention and life skills after having problems trying to get the government to accept another project we had before this one. We used to call it school organic agriculture program. Nobody wants agriculture. And the ministry told us, to hell with your agriculture. The kids don't like agriculture. The parents don't want agriculture. The ministry does. So we decided, instead of calling it schools organic agriculture program, call it school-based crime prevention and life skills. And right now, as I'm talking, we are good bedfellows with the Ministry of Education. They think we are the best organization because we, in actual fact, are helping to address crime.
Because when you teach somebody to do something, it's better than when you just teach them how to read and write.
Exactly. And unfortunately, and I don't know why, but I think I can guess, we had 844 introduced to us, and it had art and craft, home science, music, agriculture, name them. They were all there. We removed one after the other, throwing them away. And now what's remaining is an empty 844, is a shell of the intended 844. And that's where we went wrong, because those things were practicals. Right now, we have kids who cannot sew a button. You see, simple things. But it's us who mislead our children, because we told them that the only thing that a parent should lead to a child is education. And the kids do it very well. And they're told, you pass exams, get certificates, get employment. And you very well know, at the end of that line, unemployment is the order of the day. There is no employment. So kids get disillusioned, get disappointed, they come back and they fall into crime. They fall into crime, drug abuse, and all that.
So we have to correct our education system.
It's our education system that needs fixing.
So how can that be implemented? How because the government doesn't seem to want to start another system.
I am an old mzee, but before I go, God forbid, I have started a school that will demonstrate what I'm saying. It's going to be there. I will start with kindergarten. You know what? That kid at 3 years, between 3 years and 6 years, is not ready for 1 + 1 is 2. It's not ready for that. That is the time their intellect is not developed. So when you tell them to read or write 1 + 1 is 2, you're tormenting these kids, you're destroying them. Give them enough time to play, enough time to be artistic, interact, let them have confidence, and not academic stuff.
I also have the feeling that the present education system may be coming to crime and unemployment, all that. There is a kind of, it has a failure approach, because when you fail, you are considered you are failed. When you get these marks, you are failed. And from class 1 to class 8, maybe you are around 16 years, then somebody tells you that you have failed. Then again you will go to form 4, somebody tells you again you have failed.
That's another bad thing about our education system. A kid goes through education, and at some point they sit an exam and they're told that they have failed. At that age, you are not able to take in. You're told that you are failing, and it's the only thing in life. You're destroying that kid. That kid is not ready to be told they have failed in life. Yeah? At Form 4 again, those who are lucky and go to Form 4, another axis is cast on them. You have failed. That's destroying people. And you're basing life on a mere exam which is done for a day or a week, and you tell them they have failed. It's our education system, the examination system is destructive, and even those who are lucky and go to colleges and universities, they graduate into unemployment. An education system that has unemployment as one form of graduation needs to be overhauled. It needs to be revisited. So it's all like schools are the best place to fix everything about a community. But if what is done in schools is just exams, academic stuff, then we are destroying this country. I agree that children should go to school. I agree that all those core values, core values, good morals, life skills, they should follow the kids into school, not just academic stuff. All the practice, they should actually, the school should be a learning, a kind of education that is wholesome, an inclusive kind of education. That's what we need for this country, and that's how to tackle the whole question of unemployment.
So I know we can talk about the education system for a very long time. So where do you see Rodikene? What is your vision? What are your future projects, maybe? Because you have started a school-based, the one that you have started, school-based, let me just confirm the name.
School-based crime prevention
and life skills
yes,
program. You have one on HIV, and now you have the one that really caught my eye was the not the crime-based, it was the one that you're dealing with. Let me just confirm our viewer. The pre-trial detainees and crime prevention project. I think that is one that really caught my eye, because I've seen that you are trying to deal with the detainees that have not yet reached the courtroom.
Exactly.
People who are in remand.
Our work and our programs, one program leads to another. For example, when we started working with prisoners, we realized that we cannot work with prisoners alone without interacting with the community, and that's why we started following up ex-prisoners and working with them and their home communities. Once to working with prisoners, we found that most of the people inside prison are young people, poor people, young people, and we realized it doesn't make a lot of sense to wait for kids to come into prison to be corrected by road. In actual fact, that's why we started a school-based program, to actually stem the flow of young people into prison. Then, while working with prisoners, we realized that these guys, you give them skills in agriculture, in agro-processing and value addition, in appropriate technology, income generation. It doesn't make any sense if they are going to be to succumb to the evils or the vices of this world. For example, HIV and AIDS. You give them all these skills and then they are knocked by HIV and AIDS. You give them all these skills and then they succumb to drug and substance abuse. So we started a program to, in actual fact, create awareness on HIV and AIDS, the issues about drug and substance abuse. And whilst you're working with prisoners, we realized that HIV and AIDS, in actual fact, doesn't spare anybody, whether you're a remandee or a convicted prisoner. And we also realized that inmates, remandees, in actual fact, in a prison setup, it's better for you to be convicted and be a prisoner than when you are a remandee or pre-trial detainee, because those guys just stay there, overcrowded, waiting for a case. They even don't know how to face the judge. There is nothing as traumatizing than going to see the judge and you don't know how those things. That's why we decided that because these people are human beings, whatever education we are giving should cut across. Let's also start by involving pre-trial detainees, and luckily the government, the prisons department.
So you teach them how to maybe handle themselves in trial, because people are poor and they don't have the money for the good lawyers. That is true, and
exactly.
others don't even have the knowledge the, you can say, knowledge about the law, how the law works, how
Yes.
the system works.
We actually give them education to understand court proceedings, how things are done in that court, how they themselves should in actual fact even link up with the people. There are people who are in a remand and their parents or their relatives don't know. So we help them link up with the community to tell them so that they can be supported. We also give them you can languish in prison in a remand home for years and years just because your file is misplaced. We help them in tracking where the files are so that you can go and face the judge. If you are convicted, well and good. If you are out of the hook, well and good. But you should not languish in prison or in a remand just because the file or in your case has stuck somewhere.
So let me go back to your future as Roddy Kenya, because you have all these very helpful initiatives. What do you see, except those initiatives that have started, where do you see yourself as Roddy Kenya?
As Roddy Kenya, we need to, in actual fact, continue doing what we are doing, but doing it with dignity. We also need to involve the community, because what we are doing as an organization, what we are doing with the support from external donors can actually be done with support by Kenyan people. What we're trying to think of is doing rehabilitation of prisoners with dignity, not begging from out there to come and help mop up our mess, but involving the community in the rehabilitation of prisoners. With the time, because funds are not easy coming, and because of economic crisis, the West, where we get support from, they're telling us we can't continue forever. So it's high time you started getting your feet on the ground, mobilize your resources, and be on your own. So what we're planning to do is to run those classes that we run with support of the relatives. If your son is in prison and you want him to study accounts, pay for it. Pay Roddy to teach that accounts. That way we can continue.
We can at least get in funds.
Yes.
On that issue of funds, I'd like you to briefly, just very briefly, comment on NGOs have been accused recently of being some political, others are getting fraudsters, they are getting funds and not maybe doing the initiatives that they say to the donors. So they are set up as businesses where people just fraud people. So what is your take on that? Because you have done this for a while.
I've done this for a while, and I know this Kenyan society is full of crooks. Not in the NGO world, but even in churches. I think we have a rotten society this one. We have a rotten society. Go wherever you go, you find criminals. Wherever, even in parliament. Imagine. This is a society that needs them. I don't know whether God needs to come, because I don't want to cast aspersion on NGOs. I know there are crooks in the NGO world who siphon money. And there are crooks in churches. And there are crooks in every whatever. What we need to actually start doing is not pointing fingers
or at
certain whatever, but looking for how do we, in actual fact, sort out our mess. Because corruption everywhere. If you want your son, if you want to go to the army, you have to bribe. If you want your kid to go to a certain school, you have to bribe. It's going to win this country. Having said that, the blame and accusation and counter-accusation. The government is blaming NGOs, the NGOs are blaming the government, and that won't get us far. We need to actually sit and ask ourselves, where are we going wrong? As a government, and as an NGO, and as a people. Yes.
So in conclusion, because we are winding up, I would like you maybe, because you deal with the youth, and the youth in Kenya have a lot of problems, from unemployment to drugs, to a lot of falling into a lot of social issues, social evils. That what can you tell our viewer, our youth watching? What can you tell them? Because maybe they have just graduated, they have they have graduated with a certificate, with a diploma, with a degree. Somebody is telling them to move on to masters, but the jobs are not there. So what can you give them? Something.
My advice to our people, because they have been gone, they have gone through an education system that has its own limitations, but we won't throw in the towel. Use an approach that I always tell people. Identify and mobilize locally available resources. If you're looking for resources, you'll find them. If you're looking for problems, you still find them. It's what you're looking for that will save you. Our youth, with the skills that you're given, don't look for employment because employment is not there. Look for what you can do yourself. Not many times we are egoistic, or we look inwardly, asking myself, what can I do in order for me to benefit? From now on, you youth, ask yourself, what can I do for my village? What can I do for my county? What can I do for my fellow whoever? For them to benefit. If you get that one right, you also benefit.
Yeah. Thank you for coming to the show, Mr. Ngunjiri, and it has been a pleasure. And I believe he has said it all. Don't look for problems, look for solutions. This is Karanja Philip, and we'll be back on the other Friday with another inspiring and powerful story. Goodbye.
Nangwasiza ulole wewai tutula ulole wewai tutula ulole wewai tutula nangwasiza